Welcome to the next lecture of our BDD with ReqnRoll series, and we are going to talk about data tables and understand how we can work with data tables in more better fashion in this particular lecture. So we have not really worked with the data table before in this particular series, and I will show you what exactly is data table and how it is also part of the Gherkin specification, and also how we can effectively use in the ReqnRoll. And they have got a lot of features in ReqnRoll, and we will see one of them like one by one. So as you can see over here, I'm going to say that when I enter the username as admin and password as password over here, maybe we can actually split this into a table and show them all together in a table format as well. So I can probably use this scenario to talk about it, or maybe I can create another scenario where just for the readability purpose, we can probably say, I'm going to say create user feature, right? Like this feature. And I'm going to create this feature over here to test the feature for creating an user. And the tag is smoke test again. And I'm going to write a scenario. This scenario is going to be pretty much exactly the same like what we have done over here. So I'm going to go copy and I'm going to go over here. I'm going to paste it. So because I need to perform a login operation before I create a user. So I'm going to say all these things over here. And the scenario name is going to be creating a new user. Yeah, looks perfect. All right. But I'm also, because I also need to log into the, probably I also need to navigate to the application before I do the things. So I need to do a background over here. So I'm going to say background. Given before that, I need to navigate to the application as well. So I'm going to say, given I navigate to the eaapp.somi.com, given I click the login link, and then when I enter the username as password, blah, 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 and I see, I don't have to verify whether it's been logged in or not because I've checked this millions of times before. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. And I'm going to say, and I click the create new link and I enter new user details. And over here, the user detail that I'm talking about is going to be, if I just go to the eaapp.somi.com, which is this one, let's say admin as admin, password as password. Oh, look at that. It's a bummer. Is it still working? Yeah, there we go. That's working. Something related to cache or anything like that. Yeah, that's working. And if I go to the create new user, you see that we got a name, salary, duration worked, grade, and email. So these are things that I need to enter to create a user. But guess what? I actually need to enter those details over here. And I can just keep on doing something like this. Enter the user detail as name, as test user, and what is that? What is the other thing we have got? Salary, duration worked. So I can probably just say, comma, salary as 10,000 and duration worked, something like that. So I can keep on entering all these details over here because the problem is the text is going to be so much long that you can't even read through. I mean, for this particular application, we have got around 5 fields. But what if your application has got around 20 fields? Then how can I even enter all these fields with this particular step definition that you have, like steps you have got? So in order for resolve this particular problem, we have got this data table feature. So basically, I'm going to say, and I enter the user detail as follows, as follows. And then I'm just going to say over here, look at that. I'm going to say name, duration worked, and what was the other one that we had got? Salary, grade, grade, and email. These were the things that were there before. And I'm going to enter the details. So name is going to be test user, duration worked, and I'm going to say test user at gmail.com, something like that, right? Look at that. So this is what is the table creation that we have got. So this is how I create the table over here, which is pretty cool, right? Like this looks very readable because you have like a pipe symbol, which is going to tell like this is the column and this is the data that you are entering. You can enter multiple data as well, and that becomes like entering multiple data on the same form during that particular execution. You can do that as well, but I'm just going to limit it with one data for now, because we are going to talk about how we can work with multiple data in our next lecture. But for now, just see how you can create this data over here, which is quite cool. So now I need to implement this particular step definition. So this is the table which I'm talking about, data tables in ReqnRoll world. Now, in order to implement these two step definition, once again, I'm going to go, I want to say define steps. It's going to bring two steps. Note this time, we have got a data table as a parameter for this particular step, this step. So this data table is new. It is a type which the ReqnRoll automatically converts during the creation or execution of this particular step definition for you. It knows that it is dealing with some tables, and it has to input the data as a parameter, which is a data table type. So that is what it is happening over here. So I'm going to create a new step definition like what it has told me to do it. So I really accept that. And it has created a new step definition. And you look at that, we have got a data table parameter. You remember in our earlier lectures, we were talking about creating the step definition for the enter the username, which is going to be, look at that. If I just go right click, go to definition, you see that we have passed the string, and the parameter is string as admin and password as password, like that. And similarly, we also did a regular expression, and also we passed the parameters over here while we were working with the examples in our earlier lectures, while we were working with the scenario outline. Same concept here, just that because we are working with the tables, the parameter will now turn into data table. So that is what has happened over here, right? Pretty cool. So now we're going to do the implementation part. Let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to say console dot write line, and I click the new link, which is amazing. For the data table part, it is a bit more tricky. So because it's a data table, and a table will have like a rows and columns in there, we have to identify how that table is going to be structured in the ReqnRoll world. So I'm going to use a var type, which is a implicitly typed variable, and I'm going to say table is equal to data table. So this data table, as you can see, just over there, it is a type of data table. And if I hit dot there, you see that we have got a lot of different methods as well, like compare to instance, add row, fill instance, header, and it also has got a create instance, contains column, compare to set, fill instance, header, rows, row count, something like that. So let's assume, so we'll see this rows is like it's going to bring you all the rows from that particular table. So if I want to bring all the rows, for instance, in this particular table, which we have got, so I can print all the rows as well over here. So let's put a breakpoint here. I'm going to save this code, and let me try to build this solution. And if I go to, yeah, there we go. So we get to create new user. I'm going to debug this particular scenario for the very first time. We have not did debugging before. We're doing the debugging for the first time by putting a breakpoint. Look at that. I'm going to get an exception here. What is this one? Calculator step definition fails. We don't even need this calculator step definition, remember? Because, yeah, we don't even have anything to do with that particular calculator step definition. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to build the solution. So only we found it during the debugging phase, which is amazing. And also this calculator feature is also not required. So I'm going to get rid of that as well. And now if I go to the create new user, hopefully it brings me up the debugging point here. Yeah, it got it. And if I hover to the data table over here, you will notice that the data table comes in, and it also shows me that there is a headers and rows this time. Look at that, the headers over here. If I just go and view the headers, it's an enumerable visualizer comes in with Visual Studio as a part of your free version. You see that it brings you all the header like name, duration worked, salary, grade, and email, which is awesome, right? Like you get all the header information. And if I want to see all the rows, look at that. It brings me up all the entire rows, like the name, which is the column name, and the data is test user. Duration worked is the column name, and the value is the 10. Salary is the column name, and the 1000 was the data. So it brings you all the datas over here. So now we have got an idea, right? So let's say if I want to get the index of the row, like first row, and if I hit enter over here, look at that, I'm going to get all these values here. And if I want to get the first row, maybe first row, because 0th row is the actual column names, and the first row is the actual value. And if I'm going to give probably like a name, oops, you say the visualizer cannot view the current expression. Maybe, how about that? It's not really bringing the particular value, but yeah, you got the idea, right? Like how we can actually do these things. Now we can write the code over here and see how that can be written in a well formulated fashion. So we have got this particular row over here. So I'm going to write a code like a for each over here, and look at that. It's already bringing in all the records for me, which the code is actually wrong, because I'm going to say, because I've already written that before. So you just say var row in data table dot rows, like this one. You don't even have to declare again, something like that. And I'm going to write here console dot write line. And over here, I'm going to say just going to use string interpolation over here. The name of user is, which is going to be row of name, something like that. Similarly, the name of the email, the email of the user is this one, and duration worked, probably, which is going to be duration worked, and similarly, we have got salary, I guess, the salary of the user, which is going to be salary. Pretty cool. So now I have given all of these over here. So now I'm going to save this code, and now let's try to run this, and I will show you the magic, what is going to happen. So the moment I run this particular code over here, you will notice that it is going to print all the details. The name of the user is test user. The email of the user is testuser@gmail.com. The duration of the user is 10, and the salary of the user is 1000, which is amazing. So we get all the details just using the data table.rows property. So we can iterate through them, all of them over here. So this is how you can actually get the details of a user, details of a table from the feature file, as you can see over here, which is pretty cool, right? Like this is how you do it. So now you can use this data to be passed into your Selenium code or Playwright code to perform any operation on the UI. You can do all sort of things, which we'll be talking later in this particular series anyways, but you got the idea, like how we are actually doing with the ReqnRoll over here while working with the tables at the moment. But we can work with even more ways with the tables, not just with the data table.rows. But what if you are gonna use a strongly typed variable? For instance, you wanted to use the model of your C#, and then you wanted to fuse the data from this data table into a type. You can do that as well. So, what I really mean about that is, let's assume I'm gonna create a folder here, and I want to call this as models, and I'm going to create a small class over here. I'm going to call this as my data table models, something like that, right? This is going to be the entire model which I'm going to be holding, something like that over here. And I wanted to probably create a class. Maybe not even a class. I can probably even create a record type if I wanted to. Anything is fine. You can even create a class or a record type. That shouldn't be of any problem. So maybe in here, I don't want to give the class name as this one. I'm going to give this as user details over here. I'm going to create a record type in C#.NET, which is very straightforward then compared to a class itself. Just believe me, you can just create a record type, something like this. And here I'm just going to say string name, email, duration worked, salary, and finally string grade, something like that. So you see that, which is pretty cool. I mean, the AI knows what I'm talking about. So there we go. So we have got all these over here. Let me get rid of the unnecessary usings that we have got. We don't even use all of these. Cool. So you see that we have got a record type, which is pretty much like a class type really, but just that you pass it like a parameter to declare your variables there. And this is going to be great, capital letter. Right. And now what I'm doing essentially is this user details that we have got is going to be of a type pretty aligned with your table that you have got, which is the create user, like name, duration worked, salary, grade, and email, right? Similarly, if you just go over here, name, email, duration worked, salary, grade over here, right? And now I wanted to see what I did over here is I'm trying to get the table rows, something like this, and I'm passing it to a to an actually loosely typed variable. Instead of doing it this fashion, I can now write in another fashion. So this is way one to read the data from data table into a variable. The way two, which I'm talking about, is read the data from a data table into a record or class type. And the reason why we wanted to do it is because we wanted to create a strongly typed data as well. So I will tell you what I really mean about the strongly type over here. So let's say I have got this class type, like user detail, and I wanted to inject all the data from the user detail type, into the user detail type from the data table. The way I can do it is var user details. Look at that, the AI is writing for me. Data table dot, and there is something called as create instance method. So this create instance method will accept any type. So in here, I wanted to inject the user detail type that I just created over here. This guy, the user details type, right? And now this user detail type will, this data table value that we have got will be transformed or transposition or whatever you want to name it. It's just going to be transformed into the user details type because the data table's column name matches the properties of this type, which is the name and the age, name, duration worked, grade, everything that we have given there. And now if I try to get the details of the user, like username, I just have to do like username dot name. So you see that now we get a strongly type like name over here. In here, you have to type like a loosely typed variable, like with the double quotes of name. So what if you just mistype it like same or maybe like name like that? This thing will just fail immediately. But over here, in this code that we are trying to write over here, you can't even type it wrongly because the compiler will immediately tell you there is something wrong going on. So over here, I'm just going to write like this. So you see that I'm going to get all the details like the name, email, duration worked, salary, grade, and everything. Salary, grade, everything over there. So I'm going to just comment this code. And I also notice that I'm also not doing a for loop iteration this time because it's all already passed into this user details for me. And now if I try to run this particular feature or a scenario over there, you will notice that it is going to do exactly the same thing like how it was doing before, but just that now this user details has got all the records that we are looking for from the data table. So if I try to do a debug, and I'm show you what's going to happen over here, look at that. The user details type will already automatically have all the records that we needed over here, and it's all just transformed and posted there. So instead of you doing this way, you can do the second way, and the most preferable way, which is done in enterprises, which is the create instance method, which is going to make your life even more easier comparing to what you have done on the first way that you have got. Either way, it's going to make your life more easier. You can just create a type, and then you can use this type as a parameter to your Selenium code or Playwright code. You can pass it, and then you can play around from there. It is going to be very straightforward. So this is how you actually work with the data tables using create instance method. But the next question naturally comes is, Karthik, how do I work with multiple rows? Because we don't even have like a scenario where we just work with one row of data. We have like multiple rows of data. How do I actually work with this? We'll be talking about that in our next lecture.